Within 20 minutes of your last cigarette, your heart rate and blood pressure are already sliding back toward normal, and the tiny vessels in your hands and feet are warming up as they relax. But there is a reason the next 72 hours can feel like the hardest thing you have ever done, and it has almost nothing to do with weak willpower. By the end of this, you will know exactly what your body is rebuilding at every hour and why the very worst part is over far sooner than anyone tells you. So let's start the clock the second you stub it out. For years, every single puff delivered a hit of nicotine to your brain in about 10 seconds, faster than a drug pushed straight into a vein. Therefore, your brain did something clever and quietly dangerous. It grew thousands of extra nicotine receptors just to handle the constant flood. Hold on to that one detail, because those extra receptors are the hidden villain of this entire story, and we will come back for them. For now, picture your body as a repair crew that has been locked out of its own building for years, breathing in smoke instead of working. The moment you quit, you hand them back the keys, and at 20 minutes the first crew is already on site, calming your racing heart. But the real poison is still circulating, because cigarette smoke floods your blood with carbon monoxide, the same gas that pours out of a car exhaust. That gas had been stealing the seats your oxygen was supposed to sit in, quietly suffocating your organs around the clock. So somewhere between 8 and 12 hours in, the carbon monoxide in your blood falls by half, and your oxygen levels climb back up. Therefore, organs that had been running on fumes for years finally get a full breath, and you may notice your head feels a little clearer already. At 24 hours, your risk of a heart attack has already started to drop, because your blood is no longer thick with smoke and your vessels are no longer clamped shut. But the repair crew is not just fixing pipes, it is rewiring your senses. Around 48 hours, the nerve endings damaged by smoke begin to regrow, and food starts to taste like food, and the world starts to smell sharp and alive again. And yet, as your senses wake up, so does something far less pleasant. Because by around 72 hours, the nicotine has completely left your body, and this is exactly when withdrawal hits its hardest peak. Now remember those thousands of extra receptors your brain built. This is their moment. Suddenly they have nothing to feed on, so they scream all at once, and that scream is the irritability, the restlessness, the fog, and the strange ache that so many people describe as a feeling of loss. So if quitting has ever felt like grieving for something, that is not weakness. That is the physical sound of your brain rebalancing itself in real time. But here is the turn that changes everything. That 72-hour peak is not the start of the struggle. It is the summit. Because nicotine is gone, the chemical addiction is now in retreat. And from this point, the cravings come less often and hit a little softer each time. And stay with me, because around the 1-year mark, something happens to your heart that sounds almost too good to be true. And we are getting there. First, your lungs join the recovery, and they do it on a scale you can actually feel. Between about 2 weeks and 3 months, your circulation improves and your lung function can climb by as much as 30%. Therefore, the staircase that used to leave you winded gets easier, and walking, climbing, and even just breathing deeply stops feeling like work. But the most satisfying cleanup is happening on a microscopic level, deep inside your airways. Your lungs are lined with millions of tiny hairs called cilia, the cleaning crew whose only job is to sweep mucus, tar, and dirt up and out. Smoke had paralyzed those brooms and flattened them, which is exactly why a smoker's cough exists. The dirt had nowhere to go. So between 1 and 9 months, the cilia regrow and stand back up, and they start clearing your lungs properly for the first time in years. Therefore, the cough that worried you actually gets worse for a short while as the crew hauls out the backlog, and then it fades and you get sick far less often. Now let's be honest about the part nobody likes to film. The hardest battle was never really in your lungs, it was in your head, in the moments of anxiety, low mood, and that hollow feeling that the thing you leaned on is simply gone. But this is the empowering truth, that emptiness is temporary by design, because it is driven by those shrinking receptors, and they do not last. Over the following weeks, your brain prunes the extra receptors back down. Your natural dopamine system relearns how to reward you without a cigarette, and the craving stops being a roar and becomes a whisper you barely notice. So the loss you feel early on is not the end of who you are, It is your brain physically letting go of an addiction it never wanted. And once that battle is won, the long-term rewards start stacking up in a way that is genuinely staggering. At 1 year smoke-free, your risk of coronary heart disease has dropped to about half that of someone still smoking. That is the heart payoff I promised, your single most fragile organ given back half its danger just for staying the course. Therefore, the gains keep compounding, and by around 5 years, your risk of stroke can fall to that of a non-smoker, while your risk of cancers of the mouth, throat, and esophagus is cut roughly in half. By 10 years, your risk of dying from lung cancer drops to about half that of a current smoker, as the most damaged cells are slowly replaced. And by 15 years, your risk of coronary heart disease is about the same as someone who never picked up a cigarette in their life. Think about that. Your body holds onto the capacity to almost completely rewrite the damage, no matter how long you smoked. Because this is the part that matters most, it is never too late. People who quit after 40, 50, even 60 years of smoking still start collecting these gains within minutes. So let's close the loop we opened at the very beginning. The reason those first 72 hours feel impossible is the same reason they are the most important. You are not failing. You are outlasting a brain that physically rewired itself around nicotine, and it can rewire itself right back. 20 minutes to start your heart healing, 3 days to clear the drug, a year to halve your heart risk, and a decade to take back your lungs. That entire timeline begins the instant you decide it does. So here is the one thing to do today. Pick your quit date, write it down somewhere you will see it, and circle the 72-hour mark, because that is your summit, and everything past it is downhill.